Anyway, our next reader is Deborah Garish, and she's from Murray Hill, New Jersey, and she's the author of The Language of Paisley and a chapbook, The Language of Rain. She received her EDD from Rutgers University, taught English over 30 years in New Jersey schools, and now teaches at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Let's welcome Deborah Garish.
Thank you, Maria. This poem is called Flight. I imagine my grandfather sitting in the living room of his house the night before, trying to please his wife, who in the bedroom was sipping tea, nervously pulling knots from silk scarves, trying to please his mother, who threw dishes, then stormed upstairs and refused to talk, thinking about his 2 young sons and how he would make his getaway. Mary, his widowed mother, dressed in black, with stern face, thin lips, squinting eyes, uprooted from Diyarbakir, Turkey, escaped the genocide wearing the clothes on her back, came to America to live with him, her beloved son, made the argument against her daughter-in-law. She is not the one I picked to be your wife. Made the argument against his America, his tailored suits, his striped ties, his polished shoes, even his handsome face. The story goes he marched downtown one October morning in 1918 and bought 3 tickets. In the middle of the night, kidnapped his own boys, held their hands, and caught the train to Fresno. Thank you.
Our next reader is Eileen Van Hook, and I just had her bio, has had her poems published in various literary magazines, journals, and anthologies, and was recently the featured poet at a reading in Sugarloaf, New York. Eileen lives and writes in a lakeside college in the mountains of northwest New Jersey. Let's welcome Eileen Van Hook.
Thank you, Maria. Girl at 8. The pain in my legs came again, waking me from my dreams. Crying, I called for my mother. She sat on the edge of my bed, rubbing my legs, quieting me. When it was especially bad, she had to sit on my legs to deaden the pain. This went on for some time before the threat of polio became a constant in everyone's life. Before the iron lungs, the braces, the crutches, the small white coffins. Before swimming was banned and crowds only gathered to receive the blessed vaccine. One of my classmates disappeared. When she finally returned to school, she limped, perhaps from the weight of those shiny braces. My mother whispered her fear, unaware that I could hear. She took me on the bus to Holy Name Hospital, the bus we usually rode to buy Easter clothes. When the nun came to take my blood, I was afraid of more than the needle. She scolded me for my crocodile tears, offered no comfort. Additional tests were done, but I only remember the nun. Diagnosis, growing pains. Now, when the pain returns, I think of my mother and that nun, but I am grown and call for no one.
I do want to say I'm pleased to see so many people here. What's interesting to me is at this point we have a lot of people from all over the world who are published in the magazine and from a lot of different states. So I'm glad to see we still have a lot of New Jersey and New York people who are part of this. Otherwise, we'd have nobody at the reading. It didn't occur to me I'm going to have to increase the number of New Jersey people who are published. Anyway, our next reader is Fred Ayuchi, who was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, and now lives in Mahwah, New Jersey. He has 2 adult sons, and he has been teaching Spanish and Italian since 1974. And wait a minute, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to fix it. Is currently the language department coordinator for the Monroe-Woodbury School District in Central Valley, New York. Actually, he just retired and he just went on a lovely trip to Italy, and he kept sending little missives from Italy about where he was and where he was eating. Fred and I share a love of Italian food. And let's welcome Fred Ayuchi.
Thank you, Maria. My poem is called Dead People. Dr. Joe's mom, Lori, sees dead people, and she says they're all around me. I told her I wasn't surprised, because at 60 years old, just about everyone I know is dead. Family, friends, teachers, colleagues, and even a few former students. She sees my Uncle Joe, my father's oldest brother I hardly knew. The uncle over whose head Grandma Yuchi broke a violin because he talked back to her. Before dementia set in, my mother always said that I was just like Uncle Joe because I smelled my food before I ate it, and like him, I teased her and made her cry. She sees my Aunt Rosie, my father's oldest sister, the one I loved so much. She would take me for lemon ices on 12th Avenue in Brooklyn after we made fusilli and meatballs together, while a lit Newport cigarette she never inhaled dangled from her lips. She put samples of the raw chopped meat in my mouth and told me not to tell my mother, just like Aunt Sue did when her dog Spotty bit me. She sees my favorite cousin Anna, my cousin Mary's only daughter. When they would visit from Brooklyn, her husband Eddie would shoot up heroin sitting on our toilet in Queens Village. Anna stole money from my mother's dresser, the $200 my mother had saved up to pay back what she had borrowed from my cousin Carmine after my father was hospitalized for a bleeding ulcer in 1968. Anna also stole money from my wallet before throwing it out the window of my room. The money was probably used to support Eddie's drug habit, and my empty wallet was returned to me the morning after by a black man who found it on the sidewalk on 225th Street. She was still my favorite cousin, and she died much too young from a rare disorder after Eddie was shot in the head in front of their apartment because he owed too much money to the drug dealer. My chiropractor's mother sees dead people, and she says they're all around me. But I wonder if she sees the dead people inside of me, the ones whose bone is grafted over tooth number 8 in the upper right quadrant, one dead person's bone for each of the 2 dental procedures I had last fall. I asked Lori if she saw them and if she could tell me anything about them, but she said she couldn't. She asked me how my tooth felt and if I had any more pain. And when I told her I felt fine, she told me not to worry, that everything was fine. But I told her it wasn't, because I was afraid of death and dead people, and I didn't want any more dead people inside of me. She said I was going to like death and I shouldn't worry about it. And now when I think of death, I think of what she said, and I'm not as afraid. Can she see the 3-year-old boy with the cowboy hat who was smiling in the birthday pictures taken in Annette and Uncle Mattie's basement on 60th Street? I often wonder what happened to him. How and when did he die? Dr. Joe's mom, Lori, sees dead people all around me. She says they're protecting me and making sure I'm all right. I wonder why she doesn't see my father, whose life was a perfect circle. He was born on May 5th and died on May 4th, 25 years ago, the day before his 75th birthday. I wonder where you are, Daddy, and why the hell she doesn't see you protecting me. Thank you.
I have to say about Fred. I'm not going to say things about most people. I have to say about Fred. He is one of the sweetest, nicest people you could ever want to meet. And not only that, but he had a birthday party recently, and he had about 300 people there. I don't think I'm even going to have 300 people at my funeral. And all of them liked him so much, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Anyway, our next reader is, just a minute, I lost my place. Ted Jonathan, and Ted is a poet and short story writer, born and raised in the Bronx. He now lives in New Jersey. His most recent full-length collection of poems and short stories, Bones and Jokes, has been published by New York Quarterly Books in 2009. Let's welcome Ted Jonathan.
Thanks very much, Maria. I'm real pleased to be in the latest issue of the Paterson Literary Review. Dominion. I live in the basement, but like you, have rights to the sky. So I hang El Greco's Toledo on the wall facing my easy chair. Swirling blue-gray clouds, dark, ominous sky. Man's fate hanging by a thread. Flood? Okay, as long as it's not only me. But the sky changes. Alongside Toledo, I hang Magritte's, the dominion of light. Nicely aligned, puffy white clouds soften a bright blue sky. The paintings remained until I, like George Jefferson, moved on up. Atop a steep as a wall, New Jersey cliff, high up on floor 33. Here, in the sky, on a bright blue day, I see the unglamorous northern Manhattan skyline across the vast Hudson River, and beyond, the enormous blimp looms dumbly over Yankee Stadium. Deeper into the Bronx, 13-year-old me sits at the end of our old living room sofa and my father at the other. He's watching another war documentary on TV. I eye the heavy metal bass table lamp, the one I'll use to bash in the back of his head next time he raises a hand against my mother, if ever I'd had the chance.
Our next reader is Diane Cory, and Diane lives in New Jersey, where she writes poetry and fiction. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in the Paterson Literary Review, Louisiana Literature, Sacred Journey, and Art Times. Other works include winning entries in the annual New Jersey Wordsmith Competition. Let's welcome Diane Cory.
Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget who I am, no longer that young woman with a long life in front of her. Not a recent college co-ed, only a bit older than this young man who shares my alma mater. I forget who I have become, revert to who I once was, allow a disappearance of time to make all timeless eternal. I am like my grandmother in the passenger seat, asking a stranger for directions, then telling her companion as they drive away, "I didn't listen. He had such beautiful blue eyes." Like my grandmother, I unconsciously resurrect the self that hides. When I remember who I am, I realize my young man could be my son, even my grandson. Perhaps if I had children, I would remember more easily my place in my world, his place in his, and that time has not stopped in this place we both inhabit. Thank you.
Okay. Lauren's not here. Lauren Kleinman? I'm here. Are you there? Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I didn't have you checked off as being here. All right. Lauren Kleinman is poetry, has appeared in Nimrod, Wilderness House Literary Review, and Journal of New Jersey Poets. Her interviews have appeared in Indie Reader, USA Today, and the Huffington Post. Dark Cave Between My Ribs was released in March 2014. Let's welcome Lauren Kleinman.
This is wonderful. So many amazing readers today. Holy crap, it's just wow.
I love it.
It's awesome. It's yeah. I tell my students all the time, I say, I have an issue with swearing, so just deal with it. America the Beautiful. This is America, the dark house of fiction, the dark horse, the battleground. This is the place where I danced with my mother in the den before she was drunk and chose wine over her daughter. This state, New Jersey, is where I grew up and lived for 30 years in a home full of love, drunk love, and non-love. Mother, my mother, she's her own country. Her borders closed, highways full of inspectors, streets turning and winding with detours, all under construction. I miss her. I wish she'd give up appearances, the beer, the white wine, the red wine, how it makes her foreign, the other reality, shiny with red, drunk cheeks. I remember loving her once in long, sober hugs. This is my song for her, my mother, the beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Our next reader is Barbara Crasner, and I just lost the index, so just wait a minute. It's here, honestly. Barbara Crasner's poetry and short stories have appeared in Poetica magazine, Jewish Women's Literary Annual, Jewish Fiction Net, and Mused, Bella Literary Online. She holds an MFA from the Vermont College of Fine Arts as an adjunct in the English department at William Paterson University. Let's welcome Barbara Crasner.
Thanks, Maria. Boxed. I was sitting on the bronze Naugahyde couch in the playroom when my father walked in with a large cardboard box filled with photos from Grandpa's house. It was 1969 and I was 12, already fascinated with our Russian background, buying copies of Pravda from Hotalings on 42nd Street, even though I couldn't yet read Cyrillic. He brought the box directly to me, black and whites of women with kerchiefs and men with deep skull caps. I turned the photos over. Either I couldn't read the penciled handwriting or I didn't know the names like Malka or Deba. My father stowed the box in the boiler room in the cellar. 20 years later, I gave birth to my son. Someone had given me a baby scrapbook, one page devoted to the family tree. I asked about the box, eager to read the Cyrillic now, armed with 6 years of study, and I'd be able to slowly make out the Yiddish between my years of Hebrew school and 8 years of studying German. Don't you remember when the boiler burst, my father said? Everything was ruined, especially the photos. Nausea gripped me, faces and lives washed out beyond recognition. Grandpa was the last of his siblings to die. He was the bearer of all that came before him. And yet his fragile age, lung-collapsing coughs, and skeletal frame scared me. I had no idea he spoke Yiddish. I had no idea who he'd really been and why he came to America. That box may have contained all that I needed to know. Malka and Dubba were sisters left behind in Minsk. Both died young, Dubba in the 1918 flu pandemic. I dream sometimes of Grandpa. He takes me by the hand and we fly over the tops of the maples and elms, over the roof of the branch library, over the town's main street. The Mormons say your ancestors want you to find them. I need to connect. I need to feel them, understand them, see them. I've often wondered whether I belong in another place or time. A psychic once told me I saved Jews during the Holocaust and was executed for it. I think about my ease in learning German and Russian, of wondering how I could already know certain words before learning them in class. I think about my first night in Warsaw at an old market cafe, of waking up to a crisp breeze in my grandmother's town and feeling just as if I'd awakened in my own hometown. I think about seeing a 1912 photo of the Crasner clan and knowing the identity of each person, even though no names were written. Maybe the intent of the box wasn't for me to keep the photos. Maybe it was just meant to ignite the spark. The faces have never left me. Thank you.
I don't know if Annette Krasanik is here. No. Okay. The next person to read is Lavinia Kumar. And Lavinia, it's hard to see here, isn't it? Or is it just me? Lavinia Kumar's Rivers of Saris is published by Main Street Rag. Her poetry is in U.S. and U.K. publications, including Atlanta Review, Kalara, Edison Literary Review, Orbis, Symmetry, Pebbles, and US 1 worksheets. She edits at Poetry Wits. I think that's Writers in the Schools. Her website is laviniakumar.org. Let's welcome Lavinia.
Hello. My poem is called ABCDs, American-Born Confused Daisies. You may wonder how I ever would write a poem like that, but I've been married for nearly 50 years to one of those. A+ is the norm, as is Kumon tutoring for 6-year-olds 1 evening a week and Saturday mornings. Then dance later. This afternoon before the recital, mothers hold bangles and candies in sandwich bags, makeup and hair decoration in Ziplocs. Teen girls perform 10th after the Hindi class for US-born children who perform prayers, or the alphabet, or songs, and all the time the crowded hall is filled with people talking, walking, with paper plates of samosas, pakoras, or dal and rice. Others leave their seats as they begin phone conversations in Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, but rarely English, or they look for Coca-Cola in the hallway of the rented high school, where on weekdays students learn American history and Spanish or French. Kerala dance music, DVDs, CDs are for sale. Also Bollywood songs or sitar ragas. Many kurtas and bangles to wear, from fancy to tiny. And cartoon books of Ramayana stories found in every TV in India are in English. Action on stage is interrupted once or twice by political speech. Please listen to Dr. Sharma in Hindi or in English. But the audience just keeps on talking, walking, children run or cry. All the ladies chat or gossip, especially the grandmas, who don't get out that often, except for movies or weddings, where communal family confusion is expected, but only if the occasion is desi.
Our next reader is Maria Lisella, and she's from Long Island City. her Pushcart Poetry Prize nominated work appears in Amore on Hope Street from Finishing Line Press and Two Naked Feet from Poets Wear Prada. Her collection, Thieves in the Family, has just been published by New York Quarterly Books. It's a wonderful book. If you get a chance to get it, I really love it. She co-curates the Italian American Writers Association monthly readings on the second Saturdays of each month. Let's welcome Maria Lisset.
You're there. You're on the ground. I feel like you and I are in the same family.
Lower that, honey.
Oh, sorry. I listen. I see them in heaven steamy with kitchen vapors. Zikadutsa rolling her napkin into Tootsie Rolls, repeating her mantra. No man is good enough for any woman. She had a bad husband, I tell myself. Z Foley presses vanilla-scented pizzelle. Cugina Lisabetta beats an octopus into submission. Cooks it pink, tender, drizzled with olive oil, sprinkled with oregano. Laughter. I hear it among them. I'm on the other side of the curtains one of them sewed. It matches the tablecloths, the aprons, made of remnants gathered from the sweatshop floor. I'm not allowed to banter. I'm invisible. But I see and hear them. Through the drone of my mother's lunch report today, I heated up the salmon you gave me. My knees are talking to me all day. So I stayed in. Then I made myself a nice cup of coffee. I want to moan. I tune her out, yet hear Z. Kadutsa's other mantra. You only get one mother. Mom says, I had a busy night last night. Everyone came. My room was full. The march of the unrestful dead. Husband, sisters, cousins. She says, my mother reminded me of all the things we used to make for Christmas. Stuffed olives, pickled zucchini, eggplant salad. I snap to attention, scribble down the recipes. Thank you.